The fateful meeting at Appomattox, how two generals ended a nation's bloodiest conflict. April 9, 1865. In the quiet, war-weary village of Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, two legendary generals from opposing sides came face to face in what would become one of the most pivotal moments in American history. Confederate General Robert E. Lee, the revered commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, had formally requested a parley with Union Lieutenant General Ulysses S. Grant. After 4 grueling years of brutal warfare that had torn the nation apart, Lee's once mighty force was on the brink of collapse. What unfolded that Palm Sunday wasn't just the surrender of an army. It was the beginning of the end for the Confederate cause. For generations, this single encounter has been romanticized as the dramatic curtain call that closed the American Civil War. Yet, as we peel back the layers, the true story reveals a far more intricate, desperate, and human drama filled with strategic brilliance, heartbreaking exhaustion, and fateful decisions made under immense pressure. Before we dive deeper into this defining chapter, if you love uncovering the hidden details and lesser-known stories that shaped our world, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. To truly understand the weight of that April morning, we must step back just a few days earlier into the chaos of early April 1865. The Army of Northern Virginia, Lee's pride and the Confederacy's backbone in the Eastern Theater, found itself reeling under relentless Union pressure. For months, the grueling siege of Petersburg had drained Confederate resources to the bone. This wasn't a quick clash of bayonets and glory. It was a grinding war of attrition, where trenches, artillery duels, and supply shortages slowly eroded the South's fighting spirit. When the Union breakthrough finally came on April 2nd, it shattered the defensive lines that had protected Petersburg and, by extension, the Confederate capital of Richmond. Panic rippled through the city. Government officials, including President Jefferson Davis, evacuated in haste, hauling what documents and treasures they could as flames began to lick at the edges of Richmond. Lee, ever the pragmatic tactician, had no choice but to order a full withdrawal. His army, thousands of battle-hardened but starving and ragged soldiers, began a westward march across the Virginia countryside, hoping against hope to outmaneuver their pursuers. Lee's grand strategy was clear and calculated, born from years of outfoxing larger Union forces. He aimed to reach supply depots deeper inland, resupply his troops with much-needed food, ammunition, and equipment, and potentially link up with other remaining Confederate armies still active in the South. If he could consolidate these scattered forces, the Confederacy might prolong the fight, force better peace terms, or even spark a guerrilla resistance that could drag the war into an uncertain future. It was a bold, last-ditch gamble, one that reflected Lee's deep understanding of mobility and terrain, qualities that had defined his legendary campaigns from the 7 Days battles to Chancellorsville. But Ulysses S. Grant, the tenacious Union commander whose unyielding persistence had earned him the nickname Unconditional Surrender Grant, was not about to let that happen. Grant possessed a keen strategic mind and an iron will. He recognized that Lee's Army of Northern Virginia was the heart and soul of Confederate resistance in the East. Capture or destroy it, and the rebellion's ability to wage large-scale conventional war would crumble. With the precision of a master chess player, Grant orchestrated a massive pursuit. Multiple Union armies were mobilized, moving like a tightening noose. Infantry columns marched on parallel roads to block escape routes, while swarms of Union cavalry, led by the aggressive Philip Sheridan, raced ahead to seize supply trains, destroy bridges, and harass the Confederate flanks. The retreat quickly devolved from a disciplined withdrawal into a nightmarish ordeal. Confederate soldiers, many of whom had marched hundreds of miles over the years, now faced the full fury of deprivation. Food supplies dwindled to almost nothing. Men scavenged for corn kernels, foraged roots, or went entirely without meals for days. Ammunition was critically low, Horses were collapsing from exhaustion, and the constant threat of Union skirmishers loomed on every horizon. Rain-soaked roads turned to mud, slowing the march and sapping what little strength remained. Desertions increased as the reality set in. This was no longer a strategic maneuver, but a desperate race for survival. As Lee's battered columns approached the vicinity of Appomattox Courthouse, the situation grew dire. Union forces had already anticipated his movements and positioned themselves to cut off the Western Road, the last viable artery for escape. Lee, clinging to a final thread of optimism, saw one potential opening. If his troops could punch through the Union cavalry screen, blocking the route, they might slip southward toward potential reinforcements. On the misty morning of April 9th, Confederate forces launched a determined assault. The initial clash was fierce and promising. Rebel yells echoed across the fields as gray-clad soldiers charged forward, pushing back the Union horsemen and momentarily clearing a path. For a fleeting instant, hope flickered. Perhaps the army could break free and fight another day. Yet, that hope was cruelly extinguished within hours. As the smoke cleared and Confederate scouts pressed forward, a chilling sight greeted them. Not just scattered cavalry, but wave upon wave of fresh Union infantry, thousands strong, arrayed in battle formation. These troops, from larger Union corps that had marched through the night under Grant's orders, had silently enveloped the position. What began as a cavalry skirmish had transformed into a confrontation with an overwhelming, well-supplied enemy host. Lee, receiving urgent reports from his officers, confronted the devastating truth. His army was effectively surrounded. Union forces blocked the road ahead, pressed from the rear, and threatened the flanks. Any further fighting would lead to a slaughter, a pointless massacre of men who had already sacrificed everything. This was the moment of reckoning for Robert E. Lee, a man who had orchestrated some of the Civil War's most brilliant victories, who had inspired unwavering loyalty through triumphs at Second Bull Run and Fredericksburg, now faced his most agonizing choice. For 4 long years, he had led with courage, faith, and tactical genius. But on this day, compassion and realism prevailed. Rather than condemn his loyal soldiers to needless death or capture in a hopeless stand, Lee made the painful decision to seek terms. He dispatched a messenger under a flag of truce to request a meeting with Grant. Grant, who had been anticipating this very outcome after days of relentless pressure during the Appomattox campaign, responded promptly. The two generals arranged to meet later that afternoon in a modest private home belonging to local resident Wilmer McLean in the village of Appomattox Courthouse. The setting itself carried a touch of irony. McLean had moved to this quiet spot after his previous home in Manassas had been damaged in the First Battle of Bull Run, the war's opening clash. Now his parlor would host its symbolic conclusion. Inside that humble brick house, beneath the weight of history, Lee and Grant sat down as respected adversaries. Their conversation was courteous, almost gentlemanly, reflecting the mutual admiration that had grown despite the bloodshed. Grant, known for his straightforward style, proposed generous terms designed not to humiliate, but to facilitate a swift and peaceful resolution. The Confederate officers and soldiers would surrender their arms and artillery, but they would be allowed to return to their homes without prosecution, provided they pledged not to take up arms against the United States again. Remarkably, many enlisted men were permitted to keep their personal horses and mules, vital assets for rebuilding farms and families shattered by war. Officers could retain their sidearms and private property as well. These lenient conditions, crafted with Grant's characteristic pragmatism and foresight, helped ensure the surrender proceeded without incident or last-minute resistance. Lee, dignified even in defeat, accepted the terms with solemn grace. By the end of the meeting, the Army of Northern Virginia, once the Confederacy's most formidable fighting force, had laid down its weapons. The news of Lee's surrender electrified the nation. Telegraph wires hummed with reports, newspapers blared headlines, and celebrations erupted in northern cities, while stunned silence fell across much of the South. Many viewed it instantly as the war's effective end. Yet, the Civil War did not vanish overnight. Other Confederate armies, such as those under Joseph E. Johnston in North Carolina and Richard Taylor in the Gulf region, remained in the field. Surrenders would trickle in over the following weeks and months, with the very last Confederate forces not capitulating until late May or even June. Nevertheless, Appomattox became the enduring emblem of the Confederacy's collapse, the moment when its primary army, its strategic heart, conceded the impossible. What started as a calculated retreat across Virginia's ravaged landscape had culminated in a quiet conversation that irrevocably altered the trajectory of the United States. The surrender prevented further senseless bloodshed, paved the way for Reconstruction, and began the long, painful process of national healing. Yet it also left behind profound questions about sacrifice, leadership, and the fragility of unity that still resonate today. The events at Appomattox remind us that history's great turning points are rarely simple. They are forged in exhaustion, strategy, humanity, and the weight of impossible choices. Lee's dignified farewell to his troops days later, "I have done for you all that it was possible for me to do." And Grant's magnanimous approach helped set a tone for reconciliation amid victory. If this deep dive into one of America's most consequential moments captivated you, drop a comment below. What aspect of the Appomattox campaign fascinates you the most? The strategy, the human cost, the leader's decisions, or its lasting impact? Which lesser-known Civil War story should we explore next? And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, join us for more immersive journeys into the moments, decisions, and hidden truths that shaped the past. Like, share, and let's keep uncovering history together.